Jacksonville, Florida, the last day 18-year-old Debra O'Quinn's family and friends would see her alive was May 7th, 1979. Debra's dad would drop her off at her apartment that night. The last words Debra told her dad, in quotes, "Everything is okay, Dad," end quotes. After those words, Debra would go into her Jacksonville apartment she shared with her roommate. Debra's roommate wasn't at the apartment that night. She wouldn't be home until the next morning, May 8th, 1979. The roommate is said to have arrived at the apartment between 7 and 9 a.m. She walked into the apartment to find her brother asleep on the couch. Investigators never released the roommate's name or the brother's name because the investigation is still active and open. We also don't know why the roommate's brother was asleep on the couch. We also don't know if the roommate's brother was even supposed to be at the apartment. The roommate asked her brother where was Debra at, but he said he had no clue. As the apartment was searched, there would be a lot of blood found on the walls of the apartment. There would be bloody drag marks on the carpet near the bathroom. The roommate asked her brother if he knew why there was so much blood, and he said he had no clue. He thought there might have been an accident. And then he did tell his sister that he tried to clean up some of the blood in the bathroom. He would abandon this task and then pass out on the couch. The brother would later tell detectives he thought the blood came from one of the women living in the apartment, saying it could have been menstrual blood. Debra would be reported missing May 8, 1979. A neighbor would tell investigators the night of May 7, 1979, she had heard some screaming coming from Debra's apartment. The scream came from a woman. There would be some commotion around 1:15 to 2:15 a.m. The neighbor would look out the window to see lights on in Debra's apartment. She also would see a man carrying something from the apartment down to his pickup truck. At first, the neighbor thought it was a tire, but the thing that the man was carrying didn't look like it was a tire. It looked like it was something totally different. It was dark out that night because it was late at night at 1:15 to 2 o'clock in the morning. So she didn't really get the best look. Investigators believe the neighbor witnessed the man carrying Debra O'Quinn's body to the truck so he could dispose of her body and get rid of evidence. Investigators noticed the roommate's brother had a pickup truck. The truck would be searched. A suspicious piece of evidence would be found, a serrated knife. This would be tested. Investigators say the test tested positive for fragments of bone on the knife. This test only proved there was bone fragments on there. There was no way of telling back in 1979 if the bone fragments were human or some type of animal bone. The apartment had no signs of forced entry. There would be a handprint found on the wall in Debra's room. The handprint didn't belong to Debra, the roommate, or anybody like friends or family. Investigators also couldn't prove when the handprint was put on the wall. The handprint could have been there way before the murder occurred, but we don't truly know. Debra was dropped off at her apartment by her dad around 9 p.m. May 7, 1979. The roommate's brother claims he arrived at the apartment around 3 a.m., but he found nobody in the home. Claims he thought the blood was menstrual blood. He tried to clean it up, and he wasn't alarmed by the amount of blood either. And then he fell asleep and didn't call anybody. Months would pass. Nobody knew where Debra was. December 12, 1979, Debra's body would be found badly decomposed in a wooded area off of Mount Pleasant Road. The cause of death is believed to be his stabbing. A few more years would pass. There wasn't much to go off of it by this point, until a known serial killer would confess to killing Debra O'Quinn. His name is Henry Lee Lucas. At first, investigators believed his confession. As detectives interviewed him, they would notice Henry Lee Lucas was saying details that didn't add up, and he didn't know much about the case. And then eventually, investigators believe Henry Lee Lucas made a false confession, and he was known to do this, as many other killers have done the same. In the present day, there hasn't been any new information released to the public. Maybe there is some type of DNA that has been collected decades ago from the original case that can be tested today to help find the killer. Until then, Debra O'Quinn's case is still unsolved. If you have any information, call the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office at 904-630-0500 or First Coast Crime Stoppers at 1-866-845-8477. Stay safe out there.